Sarah Martinez adjusted her thick-rimmed glasses for the 100th time that morning as she peered through the reinforced viewport of Research Station, Omega 7. The distant planet below swirled with clouds of purple and gold, its twin suns casting an otherworldly glow across the alien landscape. As the station's xenobiology specialist, she had been studying the recently discovered world for 3 months, but today felt different. Today the long-range scanners had detected something extraordinary. "Another false reading," muttered Dr. Hendricks from across the lab, his weathered face creased with skepticism, just like the last dozen discoveries this month. Sarah ignored him, focusing on the data streaming across her holographic display. The biosignatures were unlike anything in the xenobiology database. Whatever was down there was large, intelligent, and most importantly, alive. Her heart raced as she cross-referenced the thermal patterns with known species classifications. Nothing matched. The communication array crackled to life, and Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the research bay. "All hands prepare for atmospheric entry. We've received authorization to investigate the surface anomaly. Dr. Martinez, you're taking point on first contact protocols." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she gathered her equipment. First contact protocols were theoretical exercises she had practiced countless times in simulation, but the reality felt overwhelming. She packed her portable analysis kit, universal translator device, and most importantly, her emergency medical supplies. Her grandmother always said that kindness was the universal language, and Sarah believed that healing could bridge any gap between species. The descent shuttle pierced through the planet's atmosphere with barely a tremor, thanks to Earth's advanced gravitational dampening technology. As they broke through the cloud layer, Sarah gasped at the sight below. Crystalline formations jutted from the landscape like frozen lightning, while bioluminescent forests pulsed with gentle rhythms. It was beautiful beyond anything she had imagined. "Landing coordinates locked," announced Pilot Chen. "Biosignature is approximately 2 kilometers northeast of our position." Sarah's team consisted of herself, 2 security officers, and a communications specialist. They had trained together for months, but as they stepped onto the alien soil, everyone fell silent. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, causing each step to feel bouncy and strange. The air was breathable according to their sensors, but they kept their helmets sealed as a precaution. The journey to the biosignature location took them through a grove of what appeared to be singing trees. The melodic tones they produced reminded Sarah of whale songs mixed with wind chimes. She made mental notes to study them later, but her primary focus remained on the mysterious life form ahead. As they crested a small hill covered in crystalline flowers that chimed softly in the breeze, Sarah spotted movement in a clearing below. Her breath caught in her throat as she activated her binoculars for a closer look. What she saw defied all her expectations. The creature was magnificent. Standing roughly 8 feet tall, it possessed the general body structure of Earth's ancient dragons from mythology, but with features that were undeniably alien. Its scales shimmered with an iridescent quality that shifted between deep purple and silver. 4 legs supported its elegant frame, while membranous wings folded against its back like living gemstones. Most striking of all were its eyes, large, intelligent orbs that glowed with a soft amber light. But something was wrong. The creature was clearly in distress, pawing at the right side of its elongated snout with one clawed appendage. It made soft, mournful sounds that the universal translator couldn't quite interpret, though the tone was unmistakably one of pain. "It's hurt," Sarah whispered to her team through the comm system. Security Officer Rodriguez stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively to his plasma rifle. "Could be a trap, Doc. Unknown species can be unpredictable." Sarah studied the creature's body language. Despite its impressive size and fearsome appearance, everything about its posture suggested vulnerability rather than aggression. Its wings drooped, its massive head hung low, and those beautiful eyes held an unmistakable sadness. "Look at it," she said softly. "It's not threatening. It's suffering." The creature seemed to sense their presence and turned toward their location. For a moment, human and alien regarded each other across the impossible distance of evolution and space. Then, to everyone's amazement, the dragon-like being slowly lowered itself to the ground in what appeared to be a submissive posture. "The universal translator is picking up something," reported Communications Specialist Park. "Very faint, but it seems to be trying to communicate." Sarah's heart melted as she watched the magnificent creature struggle with obvious pain. Her medical training overrode any concerns about protocol or safety. This was a sentient being in need of help, and she had the knowledge and tools to provide that help. "I'm going down there," she announced, beginning to descend the hill. "Dr. Martinez." "Wait," Rodriguez called after her. "We need to follow procedure." But Sarah was already halfway to the clearing, her medical kit bouncing against her hip with each step. As she approached, the creature's great head turned toward her, and she could see intelligence burning in those amber depths. The universal translator finally locked onto the creature's vocalizations. "Pain, tooth, help," came the halting translation. Sarah's steps slowed as understanding dawned. The creature was asking for help with what appeared to be dental pain. Her mind raced through her xenobiology training, trying to recall anything about alien physiology that might apply. But more than that, her human instincts kicked in. This was a patient in need, regardless of species. She stopped about 10 feet from the creature and slowly removed her helmet, letting her long brown hair fall around her shoulders. The alien air was sweet and clean, carrying hints of ozone and something floral. "Hello," she said softly, her voice carrying clearly in the thin atmosphere. "I'm Sarah. I'm here to help." The creature's response was immediate and unexpected. Its great head tilted to one side in a gesture that was surprisingly dog-like, and a sound emerged from its throat that the translator interpreted as something between a purr and a whimper. Sarah took another step forward, her scientific mind cataloging details even as her heart responded to the creature's obvious need. This was the moment that would change everything, though she didn't know it yet. This was the moment when humanity would discover that sometimes the greatest bridges between species are built not with grand gestures or complex negotiations, but with simple acts of compassion. Sarah approached the magnificent creature with slow, deliberate movements, her medical training guiding every step. The dragon being's amber eyes followed her approach, and she could see a mixture of hope and wariness in those alien depths. When she was close enough to touch the creature's snout, she stopped and slowly sat down on the crystalline grass, making herself appear less threatening. "Let me see," she said gently, reaching into her medical kit. The creature seemed to understand her intent and carefully lowered its massive head until it rested on the ground near her feet. Sarah's breath caught as she got her first close look at the alien's dental structure. The creature's mouth was partially open, revealing rows of teeth that were unlike anything she had ever seen. They appeared to be made of the same crystalline material as the planet's geological formations, translucent and beautiful but clearly organic. One of the larger fangs showed obvious signs of decay, with dark veins running through what should have been clear crystal. "Oh, you poor thing," Sarah murmured, her professional demeanor softening with genuine sympathy. "That must hurt terribly." The creature made a soft sound that the universal translator interpreted as agreement. Cautiously, Sarah reached toward the affected tooth, pausing when the alien tensed slightly. "It's okay," she whispered. "I just want to help." Behind her, she could hear her team's worried voices through her earpiece, but she was completely focused on her patient. The creature's trust was evident as it allowed her to examine the damaged tooth. Sarah activated her portable scanner and began taking readings. What she discovered amazed her. The creature's teeth weren't just crystalline in appearance. They were actually living crystal, a biological material that somehow managed to be both mineral and organic. The decay wasn't caused by bacteria as she had initially assumed, but by some kind of energy depletion that was causing the crystal matrix to break down. "Fascinating," she breathed, her scientific mind racing. "Your teeth are biocrystalline. I've never seen anything like this." The creature watched her with those intelligent eyes as she worked. Sarah could feel a growing connection between them, a mutual understanding that transcended species barriers. This being was not just intelligent. It was sophisticated, probably more so than humans in ways she was only beginning to comprehend. "Dr. Martinez," Rodriguez's voice crackled through her comm. "We're reading multiple biosignatures approaching your position, large ones." Sarah looked up to see several more dragon-like creatures emerging from behind the crystalline formations. They moved with fluid grace, their iridescent scales catching the light of the twin suns. But unlike her patient, these beings radiated power and confidence. They were clearly the equivalent of this world's apex species. The largest of the newcomers, a magnificent specimen with scales that shifted from deep blue to silver, approached slowly. Its mental presence felt different from Sarah's patient, stronger, more assured. When it spoke, the universal translator rendered its words in a deep, resonant voice. "Human creature, you show kindness to one of our young. This is unexpected." Sarah realized that her patient was actually a juvenile, which explained its smaller size and more trusting nature. She stood slowly, keeping her hands visible and non-threatening. "I'm a healer," she said simply. "Where I come from, we help those who are suffering regardless of what they look like." The adult dragons exchanged glances, and Sarah caught the edge of what seemed to be rapid mental communication. Her patient, the young one, made several urgent sounds that caused the adults to focus intently on her. "The youngster speaks of your gentle touch and desire to ease pain," the leader said. "Such behavior is rare among the star-traveling species we have encountered." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. These beings had encountered other spacefaring species before. That meant humanity was not alone in the galaxy, and more importantly, other species had apparently not made the best first impression. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. Another of the adults, this one with scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, stepped forward. "The metal builders came first. They sought to strip our world of resources. The hive minds came next. They attempted to claim our territory. The war singers brought only destruction. All sought to take. None sought to heal." Sarah's heart sank as she understood the implication. Humanity's first contact with this species was being measured against encounters with other aliens who had proven hostile or exploitative. The pressure of representing her entire species suddenly felt overwhelming. But then she looked down at the young dragon, still patiently waiting for her help, and her resolve strengthened. She wouldn't let politics or fear prevent her from doing what was right. "May I continue treating your young one?" she asked. "I believe I can help with the crystal decay." The adults conferred again in their rapid mental exchange. Finally, the leader nodded. "You may proceed, but know that we will be watching. Your actions here will determine how we view your species." Sarah nodded and returned her attention to her patient. She pulled out her portable medical fabricator, a device that could synthesize basic compounds based on scanned molecular structures. If she could analyze the healthy crystalline tooth structure and create a compatible repair matrix, she might be able to restore the damaged tooth. As she worked, the young dragon remained perfectly still, instinctively understanding that the procedure required precision. Sarah found herself talking to her patient, partly to keep herself calm, and partly because she sensed that the creature found her voice soothing. "You're being so brave," she murmured as she carefully injected the repair matrix into the damaged areas. "This should help restore the crystal structure. Your tooth should be good as new in a few hours." The effect was almost immediate. The dark veins in the tooth began to fade as the healthy crystal matrix spread through the damaged areas. The young dragon's eyes widened with what Sarah could only interpret as amazement and gratitude. "The pain is leaving," came the translated voice of her patient, high and melodious compared to the adults. "How do you possess such knowledge of our physiology?" Sarah smiled, removing her gloves and packing away her equipment. "I don't actually. I'm just applying basic medical principles and hoping for the best. But it looks like the treatment is working." What happened next surprised everyone, including the adult dragons. The young creature carefully moved its great head closer to Sarah and began producing a soft, rhythmic humming sound. The universal translator couldn't interpret it, but somehow Sarah understood that it was an expression of deep gratitude and affection. Without thinking, she reached out and gently stroked the smooth scales on the creature's snout. "You're very welcome, sweetheart." The adult dragon's reaction was immediate and intense. They began communicating rapidly among themselves, their mental exchanges creating a barely audible harmonic resonance in the air. Sarah couldn't understand what they were saying, but she could feel the emotional intensity of their discussion. Finally, the leader approached her directly, its massive form casting a shadow over her small human frame. When it spoke, its voice carried a weight of ceremony that made Sarah's team tense behind her. "Human healer," it said formally, "you have shown compassion to our young without thought of reward or advantage. You have demonstrated wisdom in understanding our physiology without prior knowledge. Most importantly, you have proven that your species possesses the capacity for genuine kindness toward those different from yourselves." Sarah felt the weight of the moment settling around her like a mantle. Whatever came next would shape the relationship between humanity and this remarkable species for generations to come. The leader's words hung in the air like a challenge and an invitation combined. Sarah felt the eyes of both species upon her, her human teammates behind her and the magnificent dragon beings before her. The young dragon she had treated nuzzled gently against her shoulder, its crystalline teeth now gleaming with perfect health. "I would like to invite you to our city," the leader continued, its voice carrying harmonics that the universal translator couldn't quite capture. "It has been many cycles since we have encountered a species worthy of such an honor." Sarah's heart raced. First Contact Protocol clearly stated that any invitation to alien settlements required approval from Earth Command. But the opportunity was unprecedented. Before she could respond, her comm unit crackled with an incoming transmission from the research station above. "Dr. Martinez, this is Captain Morrison. We're monitoring your conversation. You have full authorization to accept their invitation. This is exactly the kind of breakthrough we hoped for." The journey to the Dragon City took them across landscapes that defied earthly comparison. The dragons moved with fluid grace through the air, their wings creating patterns of light that seemed to communicate complex information. Sarah and her team traveled in a small hovercraft provided by their hosts, following the flight path of their guides. As they crested a mountain range of pure crystal, the city came into view and Sarah gasped in wonder. It wasn't built so much as grown. Organic structures that spiraled upward like living towers connected by bridges of hardened light. The entire metropolis pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that reminded Sarah of neural networks or perhaps musical compositions made visible. "Beautiful," she whispered, and the young dragon flying alongside their craft made a pleased sound. "Your appreciation honors us," came its translated voice. "We have learned that aesthetic beauty is not universal among species." The metal builders saw only resources to harvest. The hive minds perceived only inefficiency to be optimized. Sarah felt a pang of sadness at the casual way the young being mentioned other species. How many civilizations were out there? How many had humanity yet to encounter? And why did it seem that so many of them had made poor first impressions with these remarkable creatures? The city's landing platform was a marvel of bioengineering, a living surface that seemed to sense their approach and configured itself to accommodate their hovercraft. As they disembarked, Sarah noticed that dozens of dragons had gathered to observe their arrival. Young and old, their scales displaying every color imaginable, they watched with curious but respectful attention. The leader, who had introduced himself as Elder Velthus during their flight, gestured toward a magnificent structure at the city's center. "Come, the Council of Minds awaits." The interior of the council chamber defied human understanding of architecture. The walls were translucent and seemed to flow like liquid while maintaining their structural integrity. Light moved through them in patterns that Sarah realized were a form of written language. The chamber itself was vast, with multiple levels connected by what appeared to be streams of flowing energy. 12 dragons arranged themselves in a circle around Sarah's group, each one representing a different aspect of their civilization. Elder Velthus took his place among them and gestured for Sarah to step forward. "Speak, human healer," he said. "Tell us of your species." Sarah had practiced first contact speeches countless times, but standing before these ancient, intelligent beings, all her prepared words felt inadequate. Instead, she spoke from her heart. "We're a young species," she began. "We've only recently learned to travel between stars. We make mistakes, lots of them. We're often scared of things we don't understand. And sometimes that fear makes us do stupid things. But we're also capable of love, compassion, and growth. We want to learn, to become better than we are." One of the council members, a dragon with scales that shifted between green and gold, spoke up. The metal builders also spoke of growth. Their growth required the consumption of entire worlds. "That's not what we mean by growth," Sarah replied firmly. We believe growth comes from understanding, from becoming wiser and more compassionate. The fact that I was able to help your young one today isn't because humans are perfect. It's because we've learned to value life. All life, regardless of how different it might be from us. Another council member, this one with scales like living starlight, leaned forward. Yet your military escorts suggest a capacity for violence. Sarah glanced back at Rodriguez and his partner, both of whom remained at respectful attention despite the implied criticism. We bring protection because we're careful, not because we're aggressive. My guards are here to keep me safe, not to threaten anyone. In fact, they've shown remarkable restraint in allowing me to approach your people despite their concerns for my safety. The young dragon she had treated suddenly moved to the center of the circle, drawing surprised looks from the adults. When it spoke, its voice carried a note of authority that seemed surprising given its apparent youth. Honored council. This human saw pain and responded with healing. She required no permission, no reward, no guarantee of safety. She acted from instinct, an instinct to help. Is this not the mark of a species worth knowing? Elder Valthus regarded the youngster with what Sarah interpreted as fond approval. Zorth speaks wisdom beyond their cycles. But tell us, human, what does your species seek from us? The question hung in the air like a test. Sarah could feel the weight of history in this moment. Not just human history, but the history of all the species that had come before and apparently failed this test. Knowledge, she said simply. We want to learn from you. Your biocrystalline technology is beyond anything we've imagined. Your harmony with your environment puts our own ecological efforts to shame. Your apparent telepathic abilities represent a form of consciousness we barely understand. But more than any specific technology or capability, we want to learn wisdom. The council exchanged those rapid mental communications again, and Sarah caught glimpses of complex emotional exchanges in the harmonics that filled the chamber. Finally, Elder Valthus spoke again. The other species sought our resources, our territory, our submission. You seek our knowledge and wisdom. This is promising. But knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. How can we trust that your species will use what you learn responsibly? Sarah felt the crushing weight of speaking for all humanity. But she also felt the steady presence of the young dragon, Zorith, nearby, offering what felt like emotional support. You can't, she admitted. You can't know for certain that we'll always make the right choices. But you can observe how we handle the trust you place in us. Start small. Teach us a little and see what we do with it. If we prove worthy, teach us more. If we don't, you'll know we weren't ready. The honesty of her response seemed to surprise several council members. She could feel their mental communications intensifying, and the patterns of light in the walls grew more complex. This approach has merit, said the dragon with starlight scales. A gradual exchange with trust earned rather than assumed. But what do humans offer in return? Asked another council member. The young one's healing was impressive. But surely you don't propose to serve merely as our medical attendants, Sarah smiled, thinking of everything humanity had accomplished despite their relative youth as a species. We offer a different perspective. We're tool makers and problem solvers. We're storytellers and dreamers. We've survived and thrived on a world that tried very hard to kill us. And that experience taught us resilience and adaptability. Most importantly, we offer friendship. Genuine partnership between equals, not the domination that other species apparently attempted. Young Zorith made an excited sound that required no translation. Yes, partnership. Learning together instead of one teaching and one learning. The council's deliberations continued for what felt like hours. Sarah's team waited patiently, understanding that they were witnessing something unprecedented in human history. Finally, Elder Valthus rose to his full, impressive height. We have reached a consensus, he announced. We will attempt this partnership you propose, but it will begin with a trial period, and the success or failure will rest largely on your shoulders, young healer. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. What kind of trial? Elder Valthus's scales shimmered as he considered his words carefully. The chamber around them pulsed with anticipation, the living walls responding to the emotional intensity of the moment. Your trial will be one of understanding, he said finally. There is a sickness spreading among our young, similar to what you healed in Zorith, but far more complex. Our biocrystalline healers have been unable to find a solution. The condition affects not just the crystal structures of their teeth and claws, but their very life force. We are losing youngsters to this plague. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She was being asked to save an entire generation of an alien species with medical knowledge that was barely adequate for human physiology, let alone biocrystalline dragon beings. "How many are affected?" she asked, her medical training overriding her fear. "Nearly 200 youngsters across our settlements," replied the dragon with starlight scales, who introduced herself as Healer Nyx. "The condition spread slowly but seems to be accelerating. We have isolated the affected young, but separation from the collective consciousness causes them additional distress." The mention of collective consciousness made Sarah pause. "You're telepathic?" "Not precisely as your species might understand it," Elder Velthus explained. "We share emotional resonance and basic communications through biocrystalline neural networks. The young depend on this connection for proper development. Isolation is traumatic for them." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. If the dragons were empathically connected, then the suffering of one would affect all others. No wonder they were so desperate to find a solution. "I'll need to examine several patients," she said, "and I'll need access to your medical records if you have them. Also, I want to bring Dr. Hendricks down from the station. He's our biochemistry specialist." "You would bring another human into our city?" asked a council member with deep purple scales. "I can't solve this alone," Sarah admitted. "Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to work together, to combine different skills and perspectives. Dr. Hendricks knows things about molecular biology that I don't." Young Zorith moved closer to Sarah, their presence offering comfort. "I will help too. I have experienced both the sickness and the healing. Perhaps I can help you understand what others cannot express." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Dr. Hendricks arrived via shuttle, his initial skepticism giving way to wonder and then deep concern as he examined the affected youngsters. The dragon children were heartbreaking in their suffering. Their once vibrant scales had lost their luster. Their crystal teeth were clouded and brittle, and worst of all, their empathic connection to their people was weakening. "It's like a cascade failure," Hendricks explained to Sarah as they worked in a makeshift laboratory that the dragons had grown for them. "Something is disrupting the quantum coherence in their biocrystalline structures. But I can't figure out what's causing it." Sarah studied the tissue samples under her scanner, comparing them to the healthy samples Zorith had provided. The affected tissue showed the same energy depletion pattern she had seen in Zorith's tooth, but magnified 1,000-fold. "Wait," she said suddenly, a terrible suspicion forming in her mind. "Zorith, when did you first notice the pain in your tooth?" "Approximately 30 cycles ago," Zorith replied through the universal translator. "Just after the night of the triple moon alignment." Sarah felt her blood run cold. She pulled up the astronomical data for the planet's recent celestial events. The triple moon alignment occurred once every few years, when all three of the planet's moons lined up perfectly with the twin suns. "Hendricks, look at this," she said, sharing her data. "The timeline matches. And look at the energy readings during the alignment." Hendricks studied the information, his face growing pale. "Gravitational resonance cascade. The alignment created a specific frequency pattern that's interfering with their biocrystalline neural networks. But why only the young?" Sarah wondered aloud. Healer Nyx, who had been observing their work, provided the answer. "The young have not yet fully stabilized their crystal growth. Their neural networks are still developing, making them vulnerable to frequency disruption." Sarah felt pieces clicking together in her mind. It's not a disease at all. It's environmental interference. The alignment damaged their developing neural networks, and now they can't maintain proper quantum coherence in their biocrystalline structures. The solution, when it came to her, was elegantly simple in concept but terrifyingly complex in execution. If the problem was frequency disruption, then the answer was frequency stabilization. Using her medical fabricator, she could create resonance stabilizers that would help the youngsters maintain proper quantum coherence while their neural networks healed naturally. But there was a problem. Creating enough stabilizers for 200 patients would require resources they didn't have. The fabricator could manage perhaps a dozen units before exhausting its supply reserves. "We need help from the station," Sarah told Hendricks. "Full manufacturing capability." "That means revealing our location to Earth Command," Hendricks pointed out. "Full disclosure about first contact." Sarah looked around the chamber where young dragons lay suffering, their parents maintaining vigil with heartbreaking devotion. The decision was easier than she had expected. Then that's what we do. These children are dying. Politics can wait. The communication with Earth Command was tense. Captain Morrison was supportive, but the brass back home was skeptical about committing major resources to an alien medical crisis. It was Admiral Chen, the expedition commander, who made the final decision. Dr. Martinez, his voice crackled through the subspace communicator. You're asking us to trust that this isn't some elaborate trap, Admiral. With respect, these beings could have destroyed us easily if they wanted to. They're clearly more advanced than we are. The only trap here is the one that kills their children if we don't help. There was a long pause. Finally, you have 48 hours and full manufacturing support. Don't make me regret this decision. The next 2 days were a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Working around the clock, Sarah's team managed to produce enough resonance stabilizers for all the affected youngsters. The dragons assisted by providing precise biocrystalline measurements and helping to calibrate the devices to their unique physiology. The treatment process was delicate. Each youngster required a custom-calibrated stabilizer that had to be surgically integrated with their developing neural networks. Sarah performed the first procedure herself, with Zorith volunteering to be her assistant and guide. You're very brave, Sarah told the young dragon she was treating, a small female named Lyrelai, whose scales had faded to a dull gray. I am not afraid, Lyrelai replied through the translator. You healed Zorith. You will heal me too. The trust in the young voice nearly brought tears to Sarah's eyes. As she carefully placed the resonance stabilizer at the base of Lyrelai's skull, she felt the weight of that trust like a physical presence. The results were immediate and dramatic. Within hours of receiving their stabilizers, the youngsters began showing improvement. Their scales regained their luster, their crystal teeth cleared, and most importantly, their connection to the collective consciousness was restored. The relief among the adult dragons was palpable, filling the air with harmonics of gratitude and joy. But as the last patient received treatment, Elder Velthus approached Sarah with a grave expression. You have saved our young, he said solemnly. But in doing so, you have also saved our entire species. Without the next generation, we would have faced extinction within a few centuries. The magnitude of what they had accomplished hit Sarah like a physical blow. They hadn't just completed a successful first contact. They had prevented the extinction of an entire intelligent species. What happens now? She asked. Now, said Elder Velthus, we discuss the future of our two peoples, because what you have done today changes everything. The council chamber had been transformed. Where once there were 12 dragons, now nearly 50 had gathered, representing settlements from across their world. The walls themselves seemed more vibrant, pulsing with complex patterns that Sarah was beginning to recognize as expressions of collective emotion. The prevailing feeling was one of hope, mixed with cautious optimism. Sarah stood before this expanded assembly with her complete team now present. Captain Morrison had arrived that morning along with Admiral Chen himself, who had insisted on personally overseeing what could potentially become the most significant diplomatic event in human history. Dr. Hendricks stood beside her, still amazed at the successful treatment of the dragon youngsters. But it was young Zorith who drew the most attention. The dragon youngster had appointed themselves as unofficial ambassador between the species, translating not just words but cultural nuances that the universal translator couldn't capture. The harmony of minds has reached consensus, Elder Velthus announced, his voice carrying formal weight. We extend to humanity the offer of the symbiotic compact. Admiral Chen stepped forward, his military bearing evident even in the ethereal setting. What exactly does this compact entail? A dragon Sarah hadn't met before, ancient beyond measure with scales that seemed to contain entire galaxies, spoke in a voice that resonated through the chamber. I am Prime Elder Astralis, keeper of our species' memory. The symbiotic compact is our highest form of interspecies alliance. It has been offered only once before in our history, and that was declined. The weight of that statement settled over the human delegation. Sarah felt compelled to ask, who declined it? A species that called themselves the Architects, Astralis replied. They possessed great wisdom and technological prowess, but they believed themselves above such partnerships. They have since vanished from this galaxy, though whether through transcendence or extinction, we do not know. Captain Morrison exchanged glances with Admiral Chen, What would this compact require of both our species? Healer Nyx moved to the center of the chamber, her starlight scales creating patterns that the translator interpreted as formal documentation. The compact establishes mutual aid and knowledge sharing. Each species contributes their unique strengths while respecting the sovereignty of the other. There are obligations but also profound benefits. Zorth stepped forward, their youthful enthusiasm evident. May I explain in terms humans might better understand? Elder Velthus nodded approval, and Zorth began to speak with surprising eloquence. Your species faces challenges we have overcome. Ecological balance, energy sustainability, interstellar communication across vast distances. Our biocrystalline technology could help solve many of your problems. Meanwhile, we face challenges you have mastered. Rapid adaptation, tool creation, what you call thinking outside the box. Your mechanical approach to problems complements our biological solutions. Sarah felt her scientific mind racing at the implications. You're talking about true technological synthesis, combining biological and mechanical approaches to create something neither species could achieve alone. Precisely, confirmed Elder Velthus. But the compact goes deeper than technology. It includes cultural exchange, shared exploration of the galaxy, and mutual defense against threats. Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. What kind of threats? The dragons exchanged those rapid mental communications again, and Sarah caught undertones of concern in their harmonics. Prime Elder Astralis answered gravely. The galaxy is not as peaceful as your species might hope. The metal builders we mentioned were driven by a hunger that consumed entire star systems. The hive mind sought to assimilate all other consciousness into their collective. The war singers... She paused, scales darkening with memory. The war singers believed that only through constant conflict could species prove their right to exist. Are these species still active? Captain Morrison asked. The metal builders were stopped by a coalition of species that included the architects before their disappearance. The hive minds retreated to the galactic core after suffering massive losses. The war singers... Astralis's scales shifted to deep purple. The war singers are still out there somewhere in the void between galaxies, building their strength. Sarah felt a chill run through her. Humanity had been so focused on the possibility of finding other intelligent life that they hadn't fully considered the possibility that some of that life might be hostile. How long do we have? Admiral Chen asked with military directness. Unknown, replied Elder Velthus. It could be decades or millennia, but eventually they will return to this galaxy, and when they do, lone species will not survive. The compact creates alliances that can resist such threats. Dr. Hendricks spoke for the first time since the formal session began. What specific obligations would humanity have under this compact? Healer Nyx gestured, and patterns of light began flowing through the chamber walls, creating what appeared to be a three-dimensional contract written in living equations. Humanity would agree to share technological innovations that could benefit both species. You would provide mutual aid in times of crisis. You would respect our territorial sovereignty while allowing peaceful settlement of unclaimed systems. And you would contribute to the defense of both species against external threats. In return, continued Elder Velthus, we provide the same commitments to humanity. Additionally, we offer access to our biocrystalline technologies, our harmonic communication networks that span the galaxy, and our knowledge of other species and civilizations. Sarah studied the flowing patterns on the walls, trying to understand the full scope of what was being offered. It was overwhelming. Access to technologies that could revolutionize human civilization, communication networks that could connect human colonies across impossible distances, and most importantly, guidance in navigating a galaxy that was apparently far more dangerous and complex than they had imagined. But there was something else, something that touched her more deeply than the technological benefits. You're offering us membership in a galactic community, she said softly. You're saying humanity won't have to face the universe alone. Young Zorth moved closer to Sarah, their presence warm and comforting. Exactly, friend healer. Together we are stronger. Together we can face whatever comes. Admiral Chen looked around the chamber, taking in the assembled dragons and the magnificent bioarchitecture that surrounded them. Sarah could see him weighing the benefits against the risks, calculating the political implications back on Earth. This decision is beyond my authority to make alone, he admitted. I would need to consult with Earth Command and ultimately with the civilian government. "We understand," replied Prime Elder Astralis. "This is not a choice to be made hastily. Take the time you need, but know that our offer is sincere and comes from deep gratitude for what your people have done for ours." Zorith suddenly made an excited sound and moved to the center of the chamber. "May I suggest something?" The adults of both species turned their attention to the youngster, who seemed to glow with enthusiasm. "While the authorities make their decisions, why not allow a small exchange? Dr. Martinez could remain here to study our biocrystalline healing techniques, while one of our healers could visit your research station to learn about your mechanical medicine. A test of the partnership before the larger commitment. Elder Velthus considered this proposal. It has merit. A small-scale exchange would allow both species to evaluate the practical benefits of cooperation." Sarah felt her heart leap at the possibility. To study dragon biocrystalline technology up close, to learn healing techniques that could revolutionize human medicine, it was every xenobiologist's dream. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "That could work. A limited cultural and scientific exchange while the broader decisions are made at higher levels." "Then it is settled," declared Elder Velthus. "Dr. Martinez will remain as our guest and student. Healer Nix will accompany your expedition to observe human medical techniques, and young Zorith will serve as liaison between our peoples." As the formal session concluded, Sarah found herself surrounded by dragons offering congratulations and expressing hope for the future. But it was Zorith who stayed closest, their earlier bond having grown into something like friendship. "Are you frightened?" Zorith asked quietly as the chamber began to empty. Sarah considered the question honestly. She was about to become the first human to live among an alien civilization, to learn technologies beyond current human understanding, and to help shape the relationship between two species. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. "A little," she admitted, "but also excited. This is the greatest adventure any human has ever embarked upon." Zorith's scales shimmered with what Sarah had learned to recognize as happiness. Good. The best adventures always begin with a little fear and a lot of hope. 6 months had passed since the first contact, and Sarah barely recognized the universe she now inhabited. The small exchange program had grown into something far more significant than anyone had initially imagined. She stood in her laboratory, a living structure that had grown around her equipment like a biocrystalline cocoon, reviewing the latest reports from Earth. The symbiotic compact had been ratified by Earth Command after extensive debate and negotiation. Humanity had officially joined the galactic community, with Sarah serving as the primary liaison and ambassador. It was a responsibility she had never sought but had grown to embrace. "Friend Sarah," came Zorith's voice from behind her. The young dragon had grown significantly in the past months, their scales now showing the deep iridescent patterns of approaching maturity. "The Council of Minds requests your presence." "There has been a development." Sarah set down her tablet and followed Zorith through the flowing corridors of the city. The architecture continued to amaze her. Walls that responded to emotion, bridges that formed and dissolved as needed, and everywhere the soft harmonics that represented the dragon's collective consciousness. In the council chamber, she found an assembly unlike any she had seen before. Along with the familiar dragon faces were 3 beings she didn't recognize. Tall, graceful creatures with crystalline exoskeletons and compound eyes that shifted through colors she had no names for. "Dr. Martinez," Elder Velthus greeted her formally. "Allow me to introduce the Resonance Collective. They are representatives of another species seeking to join our alliance." Sarah felt her heart rate increase. If humanity's alliance with the dragons had attracted other species, it suggested that their partnership was being viewed as successful by the galactic community. One of the crystalline beings stepped forward, its voice producing harmonic frequencies that the universal translator rendered as almost musical speech. "Greetings, human healer. We have traveled far to meet the species that saved the dragon young and forged the new compact. The Resonance Collective has faced difficulties similar to what we experienced," explained Healer Nix. "Their young are suffering from a condition that affects their crystalline matrix. They seek the healing knowledge that you and your people provided to us." Sarah studied the crystalline beings, her medical mind immediately engaged. "What are the symptoms?" "Frequency discord," the spokesman replied. "Our young lose the ability to maintain harmonic resonance with their crystalline structures. It results in isolation from our collective consciousness and eventual death. The similarity to the dragon crisis was striking, but Sarah had learned to be cautious about assuming biological similarities between species. I'd need to examine patients and study your physiology before I could determine if our techniques would be applicable. We understand, the being replied. We offer knowledge in return, our mastery of subquantum engineering and dimensional manipulation, technologies that could benefit all members of the Alliance. Elder Veltus turned to Sarah. What is your assessment, honored healer? Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Her decision could bring a third species into their alliance, expanding humanity's knowledge and influence in ways she could barely comprehend. But it could also complicate relationships and create new obligations. I'm willing to try, she said finally, but I'd want to bring additional human specialists. Dr. Hendricks, our quantum physicist Dr. Liu, and perhaps some of our bioengineers. Agreed, replied the crystalline being. We will provide transport and facilities for your team. As the formal negotiations continued, Sarah found her mind wandering to the broader implications. When she had first approached that suffering young dragon in the Crystal Grove, she could never have imagined that her simple act of compassion would lead to humanity becoming a founding member of an expanding galactic alliance. Young Zorith moved to her side, their empathic abilities allowing them to sense her emotional state. You think of the future, they observed. I think of responsibility, Sarah replied quietly. Every species that joins our alliance looks to humanity, partly because of what we did for your people. That's a lot of pressure, but also opportunity, Zorith pointed out. Each new alliance member brings knowledge and capabilities. The Resonance Collective's dimensional technology could allow instantaneous communication across galactic distances. Combined with our biocrystalline networks and your mechanical innovations, we could create something unprecedented. Sarah nodded, beginning to see the larger picture. The alliance wasn't just about mutual protection or knowledge sharing. It was about synthesis, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. The negotiations concluded with agreement to begin medical cooperation with the Resonance Collective. As the crystalline beings prepared to depart, their spokesman approached Sarah privately. We must ask, it said, its voice dropping to harmonics that suggested confidentiality. Have you detected any signs of the War Singer's return? Sarah felt a chill. The War Singers remained a distant but ever-present threat, the shadow that hung over their growing alliance. Nothing concrete, she replied, but our deep space monitoring stations have detected some unusual energy signatures in the void between galaxies. Admiral Chen believes they might be scout probes. The crystalline being's exoskeleton shifted to darker hues. Then time grows short. Our dimensional monitoring suggests massive construction activities in the void. If the War Singers are building a new fleet, how long do you think we have? Perhaps 5 to 10 of your years, maybe less. That evening, Sarah stood on the observation platform of the Dragon City, looking up at the alien constellations. Zorith joined her as had become their custom during her stay. Worried thoughts, Zorith observed. Planning thoughts, Sarah corrected. If the War Singers return in force, our alliance needs to be ready. 3 species might not be enough. Then we find more species, Zorith said simply. Your compassion opened the door to this alliance. Perhaps the same compassion can open doors to others. Sarah smiled at her young friend's optimism. It's not that simple, Zorith. The galaxy is vast, and we don't know how many other species exist or where to find them. But we have advantages the dragons never had before, Zorith pointed out. Human mobility and adaptability, combined with our harmonic communication networks and now the Resonance Collective's dimensional technology. We can search farther and faster than ever before. The idea began to take shape in Sarah's mind, a systematic search for other intelligent species, offering medical assistance and technological cooperation as bridges to alliance membership. It was ambitious to the point of being audacious, but it was also quintessentially human, facing an impossible challenge by expanding their capabilities rather than accepting limitations. We'd need ships, Sarah mused. Fast ones capable of long-range exploration, and medical facilities that could treat unknown alien biologies. The dragons could provide biocrystalline hulls that could adapt to any environment, Zorith suggested excitedly. Combined with human mechanical systems and Resonance Collective dimensional drives. A new class of vessel entirely, Sarah finished. her excitement growing. Exploration and medical ships designed specifically for first contact missions. They talked through the night, developing the framework for what would later become known as the Compassion Protocol, a systematic approach to finding and allying with other species throughout the galaxy. It was based on the simple principle that had started their friendship. When you encounter suffering, you offer healing. As the twin suns rose over the Dragon City, painting the crystal formations in spectacular colors, Sarah felt a profound sense of purpose. The scared young scientist who had first approached a suffering alien had evolved into something she never expected to become, an architect of galactic civilization. "You know what the most amazing part is?" she said to Zorith as they watched the sunrise. "What?" "It all started because I couldn't stand to see someone in pain. One simple act of kindness and it changed everything." Zorith's scales shimmered with colors that Sarah had learned to associate with deep affection and respect. "Perhaps that is humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy," they said. "Not your technology or your adaptability, but your instinct to help those who suffer. In a universe that can be cold and hostile, that compassion is revolutionary." Sarah nodded, understanding finally why the dragons had been so willing to risk everything on an alliance with humanity. In a galaxy shaped by species that sought to dominate, consume, or destroy, a species that sought first to heal was indeed revolutionary. The war singers would come eventually, bringing their belief that only through conflict could species prove their worth. But when they arrived, they would find something unprecedented waiting for them. An alliance built not on fear or necessity, but on compassion and mutual respect. An alliance that grew stronger with each new member, each new perspective, each new solution to the challenges facing all sentient life. And at the heart of it all would be the simple truth that Sarah had learned from a young dragon with a decayed tooth. Sometimes the greatest adventures, the most profound changes begin with nothing more than the desire to ease another's pain. The universe, vast and dangerous as it was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or